Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react.
Hey, here we are, season 11. Welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We're so glad you're listening today.
Sean, we were exhausted at the end of last season. Do you think anyone noticed?
I'm exhausted right now. It's episode 1 of season 11, and I'm already spent. I don't know. I feel like we'd do okay to still continue producing. I'm sure people pick up on the fact when we start slowing down on social media, or it takes a week to text back or whatever.
That happens almost every season, right? That we get really exhausted. But I like the fact that it is hard because it makes me proud that we finish it.
Yep.
Most of the time.
And hard to procrastinate too when you have deadlines. That there's some built-in accountability when you're committed every week and people actually listen. So I will also add this. The only reason why it works and the only reason why we keep doing it, even though we know it's hard, is because people like you keep listening. So thank you. We hope you enjoyed the holiday season and some time away from Kyle and Sean and whatever else is going on in your life. But time to get back on track. Kyle, speaking of getting back on track, I would love for you to update our listeners on where you are with the van and driving and so on, because, well, for the sake of giving listeners some reference, a while back, several episodes, we talked about pursuing certification, right? For a new van, new controls, etc., because as people might assume or maybe even know, you drive with your hands or use hand controls to operate your vehicle. Is that about right?
Right.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's the right way to say it.
Okay. So anyway, our dear listening friend, his name is Brian. I don't know if he wants to be revealed, so we'll just leave it at Brian. He's emailed us a couple times, by the way. Thank you, Brian, for doing so. Anyway, we got an email back in November. He was referencing episode 236. It says, Kyle, in short, it is illegal to use hand controls without designation. I'm going to leave it at that. He wrote more, but I think that kind of sums it up. And of course, you and I talked like, hey, is it okay to drive like that? Does insurance or does it null your coverage if something were to go wrong? So bring us up to speed. Where are you at? What are you doing about your illegal status?
Well, so I finally got my road test scheduled. So there is an end to this madness. And so
unless they close down and belly up and go out of business.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I'm crossing my fingers that this driving school doesn't shut down the next 3 weeks.
That's not funny.
At the time of this recording, I haven't done my road test, of course. I have to do 6 hours of quote, training or practice in the next 3 weeks, even though I've been driving for 10 years with hand controls. And the driving school is an hour away from where I live. So I have to drive out there, do an hour and a half, drive back, and do that 4 times in the next 3 weeks.
Jeez.
So that's going to be fun. It was really funny when they scheduled the road test. They specified We prefer that you have somebody drive you out here when you do your road test. Because basically I'm not supposed to be driving. So
Sure.
Brian was right. And my driving school confirmed that he was right through that comment. So there we go.
Do you have a plan to have somebody drive along with you, or no?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bummer because it puts one of my friends out for, almost the whole day.
Yeah.
To get out there and all they're doing is waiting around. I mean, of course, they're going to bring their computer or work, send emails on their phone or whatever. But anyway, I'm like, I feel like I'm 16 again and my mom is going to wait for me to do the driving test or what.
That's hilarious. Educate me a little bit. I don't know much about hand controls. I've been in your van and I've seen how they work. Is it easy for somebody to drive the car more? This might not be the right word, but more normally or traditionally? Do you have to remove the hand controls? Like, how does that work?
Anyone could drive my van with their feet.
Okay.
The hand controls don't impede that. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So maybe when you drive your friend can sit in the passenger seat and do work most of the way there. And then maybe a couple blocks out, you just trade places. That way they're still able to be productive.
Well,
and we all know, although you shouldn't be driving like this, you've been doing it for 10 years. So, I mean, what's a few more trips?
The other thing is, how are they going to know? What if I just park down the block and, of course somebody drove me here, but no one's going to know.
Yeah. I think we're bordering a topic of integrity here that maybe we should talk through soon.
All right, we'll talk through this offline.
We're all just biting our nails, waiting for an update. Of course, hoping you pass all your prereqs and get the certification you are expecting.
Yep, I'm anxious also, but I'm pretty confident.
For season 11, we're introducing a segment that we're calling Newsworthy, highlighting stories that you may or may not see on headline news, but we think you should. Throughout this season, we'll share brief stories that resonate with me or Kyle. So, Kyle, kick us off with the first story.
Newsworthy from Women's Health. This amputee woman just ran 100 miles on her treadmill in under 24 hours. Sean, this woman, Jackie, lost her leg to cancer, but she's an ultra runner. And that doesn't leave because she lost her leg. So this is the headline, but also I dug a little bit deeper, and she holds the world record for consecutive marathons. She ran 104 marathons in 104 consecutive days.
Oh my goodness.
And she's running on a prosthetic leg. So I just think it's remarkable because, first of all, who does that? And then a disabled athlete, So it's pretty remarkable.
Pretty impressive. It's those kind of stories that inspire other people to try new things.
Exactly.
I think about you and your bike ride to Tennessee. Had you not seen that guy with multiple sclerosis circumnavigate the United States, maybe you wouldn't have thought about it.
Time.
So anyway, it's stuff like that that helps change the world.
And the cool thing is, Jackie Hunt, I don't know how to pronounce her name, so you'll have to forgive me. Jackie Hunt Boersma. I feel in debt to her because she's so inspiring, right? And people might feel that. But I think the right thing to do is to pay it forward and know that maybe by whatever she's inspiring you to do, maybe that will inspire the next person. Visit our show notes for a link to read more on this story and more on Jackie in general. She's an amazing person that's very newsworthy.
I've been wanting to talk about this. As we are early on in the new year, it's a very common time frame for people to be setting goals, resolutions, and so on. And I imagine this topic matter, on repeat in a million different ways and platforms. So we're not exactly here to introduce the concept of, goal setting and New Year's resolution pursuing. But Kyle, I've been thinking over the last several weeks, more so for myself, but also other people in my life. A lot of people set out with good intentions, to pursue a certain goal or resolution, and then we don't follow through for whatever reason. Maybe we realize limitations, or it's going to cost too much money, or it's not the right time, whatever. I think there are probably valid reasons, but I also believe there are a million excuses. I started thinking, and I don't know where I heard it, so it's not to my credit, but I can't give credit where it's due. But I've heard it said 100 different ways. There are two types of people in the world. Those who talk about doing and those who actually do. And that challenges me at times because I want to be a person that does, right? I don't want to talk about all of the things someday I'm going to do this, that, and the other. Actually, even if I don't achieve those things, I want people to be able to say, he tried, and he tried a lot, and he tried hard, and so on. So I really thought we would dig into this mentality that we probably all struggle with in terms of separating the doers from the talkers.
Yeah, and I feel like we can all define ourselves that way, in both ways, at different times, right? I think we all go through like seasons maybe, where maybe we're super motivated to do a certain thing or to pursue a passion. And then we go through seasons where we're not motivated, where we have to rely on discipline rather than motivation, right? And so maybe it's a spectrum, and we can all define ourselves in those terms at different times throughout our lives.
Yep. I wonder if maybe we can talk about for ourselves why you might drag your feet in doing.
Yeah.
I had I wouldn't call it an epiphany, but I made a choice in December to pursue something I've long talked about and thought about and have always dreamed about, but never really took the leap, right? Or pulled the trigger, if you will. And in my contemplation of doing so, I realized one of the reasons why I hesitate sometimes is a fear of failure and a sense of not wanting to put myself out there until it's perfect. Both are bad news, right? Neither one work well for you or for us.
No, and they work together against you, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've talked to friends of mine, and I've heard them say it, and I've seen authors write it different iterations, but basically, instead of waiting until it's perfect and figuring it all out, they talk about how you just sometimes need to build the airplane as you go down the runway.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't just start doing, it'll never get done. And as you take one step, figure out one piece of the puzzle, it's probably a lot easier to begin the next piece of the puzzle or the next step.
For sure.
And it all comes together only after you take the first initial step to do that.
Yeah. I think about our first episode of the podcast. We recorded that stinking episode 4 or 5 times because we were like, let's try it one more. Let's do it again. Let's see what we can do differently. But then I feel like once we got 10 or 15, whatever, under our belts, kind of gave us a little confidence to be like, you know what? I think we can do this. And really, we didn't have that confidence until we got those episodes done. And like you said, I think we can build off of our victories and be confident that we're going to perform well in the future as well.
Yeah.
So, Sean, I think it's so true that our past accomplishments give us the confidence to know we can follow through in the future.
I would agree. I'm guessing where the hard parts come in is when you're going to try something new.
Mm-hmm.
Because you and I, we could do the podcast probably with our eyes closed in a way. But what about the next new chapter? Ride a taxi is probably a breeze for you today, now that you're comfortable. But what if you wanted to take on trying to join the NFL or whatever? Something so big and crazy that you think, oh, there's no way I could do that or I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, how do we harness this stuff and keep it in check when we're thinking about something new? And as we're talking through it, I think back to something we had Zach Wichter on the show back in episode 235. He's the journalist with USA Today. And he opened the conversation with, how do you eat an elephant?
Yep.
One bite at a time. I think it was him, right? Is he the one that said
I think so, yeah.
Sometimes when we dream about doing a race across America, it is such a big elephant. But once you're in and you commit and you start chipping away at it, next thing you know, you're standing at the finish line and maybe an incredible documentary comes. All the different little things that come together simply because somebody took that first step. That makes sense. I don't know if I'm
totally makes sense.
You or
when I was, trying to figure out how I was going to ride my trike across country. And I had never really ridden more than a few miles before, but I knew I could get down to the end of the block and then down to the end of the next block. And then all the way across country, one pedal stroke at a time, basically. And that's that same thing with the race across America, right? The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And maybe that first step gives you the confidence to take the next one.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Basha, I came across a video not too long ago on Instagram, and it linked to this platform that I've never heard of. Some listeners, maybe you have, but it's referred to as Live Letters. And they've got this massive YouTube channel where basically, think TEDx or TED Talks, but these folks that get on stage are reading a letter from somebody else about something else. Maybe it's a different time period or, whatever. It's not theirs, but they find a way to bring it to life. So they kind of put their own personality and spin. And this video I saw was the Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah. Who
I like by himself, but he does this amazing, quote unquote performance, if you will, of a letter written by, I'll get the names wrong, forgive me, Sol LeWitt to Eva Hess from centuries ago. But Sol was basically responding to Eva's feeling of distress because she felt stuck in everything.
Mm-hmm.
She's a creative person, but she was feeling kind of stuck anyway. We'll link the video in the show notes, but Benedict Cumberbatch does this beautiful rendition where he challenges the audience to put everything aside as written by Soul in this letter and just simply do. Take action. Whether it's a big one or a little one, it doesn't matter. What's most important is that you actually put one foot in front of the other and take a step.
Yeah. You shared that video with me, and what I took away from it is that there are so many reasons to not do something, whatever it is, race across America, whatever these things are. There's so many reasons to not do it. It's too far. It's going to take too long. I don't have enough time to train. Whatever. There's a million different reasons to not do it. And basically what he's saying is forget all about that. Forget everything. Forget your ego. Forget your friends. Forget what everyone's saying about you. And just do it. Just do. You are so unique. I feel like maybe he didn't use these words, but I don't know. You are the only you, and you can bring your unique thing to whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really great.
It's easy for me to feel motivated and ambitious, if you will, around the first of the year. Or a new month, or a new job, or a newness of something. But when the shininess of a new thing wears off, then what? What's my track record? And there are times where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna just keep doing, and I'm proud of some things. But there are other areas of my life, personally, Sean, where I'm like, what am I waiting for? Why am I taking so long here?
Yeah. And what's the answer?
Well, one big thing I did in December was invest some money in myself. We'll call it career coaching, if you will. And it's something I've always thought about doing and pursuing, but I've always found an excuse to work around it because it was too expensive. And over the last 6 or 8 months, what really started to wear on me is opportunity cost. And I read something, it had to be a meme or something on Instagram. I don't remember the details, but the gist of it was, imagine it's so expensive to invest here or do that thing or to build this thing or blah, blah, blah. Imagine what it's going to cost you because you didn't do any of it. And the way it was worded and phrased and put together just really hit home with me. And I thought, you know what? I'm 42. What's life going to look like in 5 more years or 10 more years when I look back and realize, I still haven't done it, but man, I'm going to. And I've just started thinking, you know what? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is for myself and see what I can create. I know it's kind of vague, but part of me is afraid that I'll fail miserably. So I'll keep updating as it continues to grow. Or if I fail miserably, I'm not going to be too embarrassed.
Well, not to get too sappy here, but I think I speak for a lot of people when we say we're way more confident in you than you are. And that's one of the things too, right? Is to really take what other people... I just said a little while ago, don't listen to what other people say. But however,
sometimes there's value.
Yeah. So,
that self-doubt and maybe imposter syndrome, it's real. And
for sure.
It can be very powerful if you don't recognize it or realize it. And I do believe that's where a positive reinforcement from other people can be of tremendous value.
Absolutely. I think at some point, though, there needs to be I don't know if it's a switch or something accessed within yourself. There's got to be motivation and discipline from within, though, too, right?
Sure.
And maybe the opinions of other people, the positive opinions of other people can help fuel that. and fan that flame. But it's got to come from within, right? And you know that, and we all know that. But there's got to be that access to that part of us that pushes our own stuff forward,
sure,
independent of everyone else.
So one of yours, you know, I've said, I guarantee you, some of the reason why I hesitate is fear of failure and, you know, fear of embarrassment. So what is something that keeps you from, you know, pursuing something new or crazy or big at times, if anything?
Yeah, no, definitely at times. I think that listeners could understand, even from my comments just today, but over the past 7 years or whatever we've been doing the podcast, I'm very susceptible to what everyone else thinks. And that's why I reinforced today that, you know, I recognize that a lot of times that's something we need to silence or take it with a grain of salt, right? But I think that's one of the things that I recognize that keeps me sometimes from, you know, doing this or that I might think is good, but then I think, oh, what is everybody else going to think, you know?
Sure. Yep, that makes sense.
I also think I recognize a little bit of entitlement in myself. I think it's easy to blame other people about being entitled. Oh my gosh, that person's so entitled, right? But I also think it's important to recognize in ourselves, and I'm saying that as I'm like criticizing myself, but to recognize that. And I think the antidote is to realize that there's a thing about working your butt off, not just thinking, oh, I deserve this. It should be me. Like, I should be the guy, whatever. But no, I need to go out there and get this thing. Like, I need to do the work and not just think that I'm the one that should have this, you know?
Does an example come to mind?
Oh, man, you're putting me on the spot. So I think I can even relate it to some of the cycling stuff. And even what I said earlier, you know, our past achievements give us confidence that we're going to make an impact in the future. However, you know, with cycling or with any, you know, a lot of other accomplishments, fitness, Mother Nature, whatever, doesn't care what I've done in the past.
Sure.
So even though I feel entitled because, oh, I did all this stuff, like I can do the next thing. No, that not just because you accomplished this in the past, but because you're going to work your butt off to be able to get to the top of that mountain or to that 700-mile, whatever it is.
Yeah. But that's a good point. I like that. There's some real truth in recognizing that DNA, the weather, does not care what you've dealt with in the past or what you've achieved or suffered. Some of those things are out of your control. And we say it all the time. What happens next is 100% up to you in terms of how you react to it, how you respond. Kyle, I feel like, you know, we could talk about this all day, but close it out, wrap it up. It's good food for thought for me and encouraging to keep myself in check. But there are two quotes I want to wrap up with. The first one, just based on some of the things you were just saying, Zig Ziglar, who we both shared a little bit about last season. He says, success occurs when opportunity meets preparation. And I've heard it a dozen different iterations. Success is at the intersection of the hard work that you talk about and the opportunity, you know, the knock on the door. Well, if somebody comes knocking and says, hey, I got a chance for you to win a gold medal, you're never going to win a gold medal simply because somebody gave it the opportunity. You're going to win the gold medal because A, you got the opportunity, and B, you train hard for it. So that's one. The other one's been running around in my mind for the last few weeks is a reminder from Jim Rohn, a keynote motivational speaker. He was a mentor to people like Zig Ziglar. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day, while failure is simply a few errors in judgment repeated every day. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be times where, I think about diet. You might pig out, eat something you shouldn't. You might skip the gym, or at least I know I will. I might stop at a drive-through, so on and so forth. But all of that catches up on you when you let those become habits and repeat them every day. Whereas success and growth and achievement, all of that is going to happen when you and when we repeat and practice one simple discipline every day and let that build until they become several disciplines practiced every day, and we're achieving the success that's important to you, however it may be defined.
Yep. So, Sean, at the beginning of the year, I think the message is, let's get to work.
Yeah.
Let's do this, right? Just start doing like that letter said.
As we do in every episode for the last forever seasons, we find it valuable to wrap up with a note of gratitude, or what we call a thank you note. Expressing gratitude helps us stay in check. So, Kyle, who's your thank you note for today?
I want to thank my 8-year-old nephew, Keller.
Nice.
He gave me a Christmas present. There's this guy. He goes by Aaron Wheels, and he does huge jumps and skate parks and stuff in his wheelchair. And Hot Wheels made a remote control version of him. So it's him in his wheelchair, and it comes with a little jump and package and stuff. And Keller and I had a good time playing with this remote control wheelchair, and it's really cool to have that opportunity to have him make a connection about my disability and viewing it in a positive light.
For sure.
He's not embarrassed about talking to me about the fact that I'm in a wheelchair, because he has this opportunity to buy this gift and to make that connection. So partly my thank you note goes up to Keller, but I guess collectively, mine and Keller's thank you goes to Aaron Wheels and to Hot Wheels for making this opportunity possible.
For sure. Stuff like that, reminding people of all ages and abilities that sky's the limit. Just because you're limited in one area doesn't mean you can't ride a skateboard or do cool things. So I love hearing that. I'm saying thank you to an entity again. Big thanks to the FSA store. Every year, for the last, 4 or 5 years, maybe, I've been putting money away in a flex spending account, right? Or a health savings account. And I just learned about it, I think 2 years ago. But, that money doesn't roll over. Use it or lose it. So there are times where I'll cut it close, or maybe I'll spend more than I had or whatever. But last year, I had a big balance left, and I was like, what in the world do I do about this money? And I found out about the FSA store, which basically everything on there is eligible. So I just went through and ordered random stuff like Neosporin, Band-Aids. Band-Aids. It's stuff that I never would have thought about or realized.
Right.
Of course, there are some high-ticket items that come in handy too. And if I do have a balance, typically I'll spend some money on a replacement roll later. But anyway, just went through that process again not so long ago. So I'm thankful that such a store exists to make it super easy without having to do research. Is this eligible? Is it not? Etc.
And thank you to you, our listeners, for listening today. You can visit our website, twodisableddudes.com, and you can find links to a lot of things that we talked about today, including that video from Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm also going to include a link to the Instagram account for Aaron Wheels. So check those out. You might get a few other goodies in there as well. Please share and subscribe to the show on all of your podcast apps. Until next time, keep living with urgency. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.